I always knew I was the extra child in my family, the one who made holidays awkward, the one no one ever really acknowledged, the one my parents only remembered when they needed help moving furniture, babysitting, or an unpaid favor. But even knowing that, nothing could have prepared me for the day I found out I wasn't invited to my sister Hannah's wedding. I had known she was engaged, but the actual date had been kept secret from me, and when I called Mom to ask about family plans, she said it like it was nothing. "Oh, you don't need to worry about the date. You won't be invited." At first, I laughed because surely she was joking, right? But then she added, casually and cutting, "Sorry, dear. This event is only for the people we actually love." And then Dad, in that calm, chilling tone that always reminded me I was a mistake, added, "Some people just don't belong at family celebrations." My sister, who had been in the background, piped in, not hesitating, not whispering, but openly proud. Finally, a wedding without the family disappointment. And then, as though it were the grand finale, my aunt, who had never treated me like a family member, said, "Real family only means real family." I hung up the phone in a state of numb shock. My chest felt heavy, like concrete was slowly being poured into it, and for a moment, I couldn't even breathe properly. I wanted to cry, scream, or fight, but all I felt was emptiness, a blank space where family warmth should have been. That night, I booked a trip, 3 weeks across Europe, the first real adventure I had ever allowed myself. I had wanted to travel for years, but had always been too timid, too broke, too afraid. This time, I didn't think about anyone else. I didn't send a word to them. I just left. Rome was my first stop, and the city felt like a rebirth. I wandered the streets aimlessly, tasting gelato, talking to strangers who treated me like a person worth noticing, not like the perpetual shadow in family photos. Paris was next. I sat in cafes sketching people, marveling at the Eiffel Tower lit up at night, and for the first time, I felt free. I felt like I was living a life that had always belonged to someone else, and now, miraculously, it was mine. Each day, I sent no messages home, no selfies, no updates, nothing. I simply existed in my own story. And then the calls and messages started. First, a few texts from my mother. "Call me immediately." Then more, desperate, from Dad. "We need you." Then from Hannah. "This isn't funny. Please, we need your help." At first, I ignored it, thinking it would blow over. But then the messages escalated. Their wedding had been canceled. Hannah's fiancé had a massive undisclosed debt, tens of thousands in collections and court fees, and the venue refused to proceed without payment. The whole elaborate ceremony, the flowers, the expensive catering, the non-refundable dress fittings, everything had been jeopardized, and they had no one to bail them out except me. Suddenly, the family disappointment, the one they had so cruelly rejected, was the only person with the means to fix their mess. And they knew it. What followed was a barrage of texts, calls, emails, and even video messages from my parents, aunt, and sister, each one more desperate and manipulative than the last. "We didn't mean what we said. You know we love you," Mom's text pleaded. "Family sticks together. Please." Dad's voice wavered in his voicemail. Hannah sent long messages guilt-tripping me, crying about the ruined dreams and the ruined memories. Even my aunt, who hadn't spoken to me in years, wrote, "We are sorry. Please help. We can't do this without you." And yet, the irony of their pleas burned like acid in my chest. I had just spent 3 weeks discovering a life of freedom, laughter, and personal worth, and suddenly, these people who had cut me out, mocked me, and made me feel unwanted were begging me to rescue them. I ignored them. I traveled onward, Switzerland, Germany, Amsterdam, exploring, tasting, experiencing, without a single thought about their crises. Every morning there were more messages, escalating from guilt to manipulation, from anger to desperation, and still, I didn't respond. I was too busy building a version of my life that didn't depend on their approval. When I finally returned home, nearly a month later, they came to me. My mother at the door with a cake, my father with a forced smile, my aunt with a gift, and Hannah standing there, looking older than her 27 years, weary and frantic. They began their rehearsed speech. Apologies, excuses, emotions, stress. We didn't mean it that way. And then the real point. They needed $18,300 to salvage the wedding. I said simply, "No," my sister gasped. My mother demanded, "Why not?" I replied, "Because I'm not part of the real family. Remember?" And then I closed the door. Silence. 10 minutes later, they left. In the following weeks, I learned through distant cousins that the wedding was never rescheduled. Hannah's fiancé left town, likely running from his debt, and my parents stopped hosting the big, lavish holidays they had always used to show off their perfect family. My aunt stopped posting about the family on social media.
And me?
I finally cut them off completely. I sought therapy, made new friends who treated me with kindness, took more trips, started a side business, bought a bigger apartment, and slowly built a life that had nothing to do with the people who had tried to erase me. Every Christmas, every birthday, every event they mentioned missing me, I remembered the words they had said that first day. Some people just don't belong at family celebrations. And I realized they were right. I didn't belong there, not because I wasn't family, but because they had never truly loved me. And for the first time in my life, I understood that family is not about blood or obligations. It's about love. And I had finally found it in myself, in friends who truly cared, in the freedom to live a life unshackled by their cruelty. That realization didn't bring anger, nor revenge, nor bitterness. It brought peace. The kind of peace that comes from finally walking away from a life that wasn't yours to begin with. And as I sit now planning another trip, another adventure, I smile quietly, because I know one thing with certainty. I am finally home, and it's a place they will never touch again. I never imagined my own sister Hannah could betray me in such a devastating way, yet somehow, as the months unfolded, it became impossible to deny. It started subtly, with the little things I tried to convince myself were harmless. She lingered too long around David at family gatherings, her laughter a little too loud, her hand brushing his arm just a fraction longer than necessary, and I told myself I was imagining it, that my insecurities were getting the better of me. But deep down I just knew that something was wrong. David had been my rock for 10 years, the kind of man who knew every flaw, every insecurity, and loved me in spite of them, yet he began to act distant, distracted, and increasingly private, texting late at night, canceling plans with vague excuses, and slipping into this subtle tension that gnawed at me until I felt it in my bones. My family, as usual, was oblivious or unwilling to see the truth. Mom had always favored Hannah in ways that stung, making sly remarks about how Hannah and David really click and brushing off my pointed questions with a flippant, "You'll see, sweetie, they just have a special connection." Dad, when pressed, always nodded knowingly and muttered something about people drifting apart naturally, as if David's wandering attention was some inevitable fact of life and not a betrayal. And Hannah herself, my own sister, started openly pushing boundaries, sending jokes to David that were private, sharing innocent memories and playful teasing that left me out entirely, until one evening it all came crashing down. I had returned home early from work, planning a quiet night to relax, only to find her sitting in our apartment, laughing with him in that familiar, intimate way that had been my comfort for a decade. My stomach twisted, and when I asked what was happening, I saw no hesitation, no shame, just her smirk and David's guilty eyes. I think I'm in love with her," he admitted quietly, as if those words could erase 10 years of marriage, 10 years of trust, 10 years of shared life. My hands shook, my voice quivered, and my heart shattered. But before I could plead or scream, my family chimed in, each in their predictable way. Mom, with that dismissive tone I had hated since childhood, said, "You've always been too serious. Maybe he needs someone lighter, someone who understands him better." Dad, calm but firm, added, "Sometimes relationships end. People grow apart. You should accept it." Hannah, smug and unrepentant, leaned back with the air of a queen who had finally gotten what she deserved, whispering to me, "Finally, someone who appreciates me for who I am." Aunt Linda, ever the instigator, smirked and said, "Real love doesn't wait for permission. Some things are meant to happen." In that moment, I realized the devastating truth. My family had chosen sides, and they had all chosen against me. I didn't cry, though my chest ached as if it were being crushed. I packed a bag and left, not a word spoken, leaving them in the apartment that had once been ours, a life carefully built now tainted with betrayal and deceit. I drove miles out of the city, through winding roads and forests, stopping only when I found a small, quiet cabin that allowed me to breathe for the first time in months. I spent days walking trails, staring at mountains, watching rivers flow endlessly, and in the silence, I allowed myself to feel everything I had ignored: the hurt, the anger, the disbelief, and eventually, the resolve. Over the next weeks, I rebuilt my life in small, deliberate ways. I found a new apartment, focused on work, met friends who treated me with kindness and respect, and for the first time, discovered the empowering solitude of being my own anchor. All the while, I received desperate messages from my family, from Hannah, and even from David, each escalating in tone from apology to begging to anger. They tried to manipulate me with guilt, with nostalgic memories of our shared lives, with promises of a better future if only I would forgive them and come back, but I remained silent, watching the patterns of their behavior with clarity. The betrayal had been deliberate, systematic, and cruel, but it had also freed me from a family that never truly valued me. Months later, I learned that David and Hannah's love had faltered almost immediately under the weight of lies, envy, and external pressures. They were constantly fighting, their social media portrayals of happiness a fragile facade. But I no longer cared. I had grown too much, discovered too much about my own resilience, and forged a life independent of the chaos they had created. I traveled, I laughed, I allowed myself to dream in ways I had abandoned during the years I had spent trying to be enough for people who would never see me. Every holiday, every family gathering I skipped, every social media post I didn't respond to, reminded me that some people don't belong in your life, no matter the shared blood or history. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the pain faded, replaced by a quiet, powerful pride in the life I had reclaimed, the boundaries I had enforced, and the knowledge that I would never allow betrayal, jealousy, or family favoritism to dictate my happiness again. I had survived their worst, walked away from their toxic approval, and discovered something far more precious than their false love: myself, whole, unbroken, and finally free.